Hi there, this is Mark Walker from the Fintech Power50 and we're here at Sibos 2019 here in London. I have with me here Andrew England, who is the Director and Head of Strategy from iGTB. Welcome.
Thank you, Mark.
So obviously, I'm sure this is not your first Sibos, so you're probably quite used to these sort of events and everything else. What we were going to talk a little bit about was the future of transaction banking, because that's really what Sibos is all about. Thinking about that specifically, it's been a bit of a gold rush over the last sort of period of time. Do you think that's going to continue?
Yeah, I think it has been a gold rush. I think there have been a few cycles. Obviously, as we move from high growth phases in certain jurisdictions and certain parts of the world, we now have perhaps a slightly slowing down phase with a little bit more tension in the international trade scene and underlying growth in major economies. But by and large, I think it remains a very important pillar of growth for most banks. If you look at it from within the sort of wholesale corporate banking context, I mean, I think you have to put it, really against, if you weren't going to push heavily in transaction banking, where else would you get good growth and good revenue for the bank? So you will always come back to high expectation levels to really push the objectives and the extent to which TB can be a major pillar of growth within the bank. So that's still relevant, and I think part of most banks' commercial banking strategy.
Okay, so what do you really think the sort of the leaders of the transaction banking sort of section should really have on their to-do list? What should they be thinking about?
I think the very large banks, I think they're pushing very heavily this sort of standardization, simplification agenda. I think that brings about its own challenges, but in a way it's the right approach, because just adopting current processes and procedures with existing clients on new technology is not really going to get you into the new world. So simplification, identification of good solid use cases, and how you want to make robust, experienced client bank really is very centric to the large organizations. I think in perhaps the more aspiring growth banks that are becoming more confident, they will be a little bit more customized. They want to compete because they're different, so there you will get slightly different flavors of how they come across to banks. But in all instances, you'll see a lot of work going on in terms of the interactions between the bank, and really, are we doing this in a way which is digitally innovative and appropriate in the context of the modern economy to date.
Okay, and obviously on that sort of digital journey, the sort of the SME market seems to be really sort of hotting up a little bit as well as a key trend. And how should people sort of be reacting, and what do you think of the developments there?
I think in economies that are really becoming very entrepreneurial, I think here in the UK, we're probably sitting in one, then the SME, the new business propositions are key for banks, especially in sectors which are going to form very important parts of the GDP of a country. So if you get in early and you work to support companies and you give them, the working capital, the business advice, the context, the connects to help them grow, then that's a good place to be. Obviously, if you look at the Middle East, if you look at certain countries in Asia, moving into the SME market is, fraught with certain risk. You've got to be careful not to take on too much risk, and probably look at where that risk can be mitigated either with technology or just through complete domain excellence in that sector and through the connects that you have as a bank. So SME, either very important, I think, for renewed activity in economy, or selectively in economies where the risk is acceptable and where you need to go deep and become a real part of a corporate's ecosystem in terms of clients and suppliers. Yeah.
Okay, it's really interesting. So obviously iGTB has been around for quite a while now. What are you doing to sort of help out in these sort of areas?
Well, as you probably picked up, and we do sort of differentiate between markets. So we have the more mature, advanced markets, and we have the growth markets. So we provide different ways in which we can help banks with respect to where they are in their journey. So I think with the very mature banks, we will have generally very good reference points in terms of what we've done in like banks in other major environments and economies. So we will always look to bring in our experience with relevant use cases and stories which these banks can actually learn off, and really feel confident that they're working with somebody who's got the expertise and experience in often a very, very narrow but deep area of their banking experience. It could be payments, it could be around working capital, it could be around certain aspects of trade. In other economies where there's perhaps a more generic need to grow and change at all levels, then we often take key bankers through change programs. We help them look at perhaps design principles. We look at transaction banking more like a phased development. So are you a phase 1 bank? Are you a phase 2 bank? So we'll look to sort of help them understand what needs to be done at a future stage of their development. And then we will often, have selective ways in which we can come into the bank and actually influence other people around the key TB players, relationship managers, IT ops, through product courses, through change management courses. Often, we would agree that with the bank. So there are many ways in which we actually do want to help the bank. Sometimes we might actually help them with looking at their business cases. Are they underestimating the power of what they're doing? Are we preparing them when they begin to launch a product using our technology? Is their go-to-market strategy the best one? So we can act as a bit of a 4 eyes type of principle in terms of giving these banks the learnings that we've had with other banks. So we'll always try and be very relevant to them and their markets. So there are many ways in which we're helping them. Yeah.
And you finding that in different markets, the incumbent banks or the legacy banks are actually a little bit more agile than others?
Yes, I mean I think in these markets they've got pretty aggressive aspirations, and often they've got new management at the top of the house, so they're going to be bold. But with that often becomes perhaps a slight lack of discipline in terms of how they want to hit the market. So again, we'll come back to, are they being reasonably prudent with the risk? Are they aware of the demands of the customers they want to target? So sometimes, that has implications for customized processes, needs for additional change to their technology framework and fabrics. But by and large, we encourage, banks that want to grow, obviously. We want them to be innovative. We want them to succeed. But yes, there will be certain teething problems as they grow, very clearly.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we don't want to take up too much of your time. I'm sure you've got lots of things to get back to the show for and look after. So thank you very much for your times and look forward to speaking to you again.
Great. A real pleasure, Mark. Thank you very much indeed.